Bill, it's time to start the papermaking video series for Print Pals. What have you done so far to prepare?
Oh, to get prepared, first of all, I watched a lot of videos. There are about 20 videos on Arnold Grummer, who was the man who developed this hand paper mold.
Why did you choose Arnold Grummer for your preparation?
Well, Arnold Grummer, he's the past curator of the Dard Hunter Paper Museum. And the second reason is I met his daughter Kim, who has continued his work after he started a company to make these paper molds and to make the videos and give lots of instructions.
I see. Our time is up. Get ready for the next step.
Oh, okay. Okay.
What are you doing now, Bill?
I'm going to make paper for the Micro R press. And the Micro R press has an effective printing area about 60 millimeters wide on 130 some millimeters long. The Arnold Grummer pour mold that I have is of course much bigger. It's like 135 millimeters by 215, made for one sheet of paper. So I'm making a system so that it has this piece of wood with 3 holes in it, and they will be the size for the Micro R press, so that I can make 3 sheets of paper with one pouring, and that will be the right size.
Okay. Holy cow. What are you doing?
I'm making a press. You see, when you make paper, it's waterlogged. You know, its pulp is running in water. And when you get all done, one of the last things you have to do is to squeeze all the water out. And in real paper making, they have great tall presses. And in modest paper making, they have sort of smaller presses that for various purposes. But this is really special since it's small sheets of paper for the Micro R press. And so I'm making a press that works with a clamp like this.
Well, okay. Bill, when did you first make paper?
I think I made my first paper in 1969, and I remember we had a cat at the time, and my paper ended up with cat hairs in it. That was funny.
What you doing now?
When you make paper, you start out with little bits of, if you're recycling little tiny bits of paper, and you recycle it that way. At the turn of the century, I made paper in the role play of a avatar named Dusty Can. That was fun. I advocate tearing up old prints that may not have turned out very well and have no hope for becoming anyone's collection. So you can recycle your old prints and give them a new life as new prints. Now comes beating these little bits of paper. Papers are made of all kinds of fibers, cellulose fibers mainly, and different countries make paper for thousands of years probably. This is Mexican, for example. It's called amate paper, and it's not made the way I'm going to make paper. This is a typical Western style making paper where they grind up cellulose fiber and make a paper pulp. And the handiest way to do this on small operations is with a blender and some water. And this is going to take a long time, much longer than this videotape. Ten minutes seemed like enough time.
Bill, what you doing now? Why are you cutting up that towel?
When you make paper, you know, it's a very wet process, and the first forming of the sheets, they come out, you know, dripping wet, fragile things, and then you put them in a press. This is the press I made for this project, and the pieces of paper go in with some absorbent fabrics. You know, a piece of fabric, and then a piece of paper, and then, you know, you make a stack, and it's called a post. A post. Anyway, and then you press it down, and it squeezes all the water out, and it soaks up in these paper. And then you keep changing it until the paper is fairly dry. And it has to be dried further, but that's why I'm cutting up this towel.
That's very interesting.
One of the hallmarks of handmade paper is the watermark. It's that little faint design that you can see in even some of the best kinds of commercial paper has a watermark. And you know, it's used in computer screens too, to identify, secure. Making a watermark on a screen like this one from the Arnold Grummer kit, you might involve sewing a metal design, and I chose to use a paper clip. It's a very tedious method, but as you can see from a speeded up video, and then to sew that little metal design onto the screen. And for mine, I chose to use the Print Pal logo, because this is part of the Print Pals project and the Printmaking Teachers in a Box. So each of the 3 strips of paper will have their own watermark. Okay, now that the pulp is blended, this is the decal, and I assembled the mold starting with my 3-part window, and then the mold screen with the wire watermarks side down facing the paper, and the rigid backing to keep it from sagging in the middle. Hold it all together. This is the Arnold Grummer kit that I bought on the advice of a friend. Then I put the works into the pan of water, let it sink, and time to pour.
How do you know how much beaten pulp to pour?
Well, even with a little bit of experience, I know that that's about enough for the size, the thickness of paper that I want to make. I stir it around, lift it out slowly.
The more pulp, the thicker the paper?
That's right. That's probably long enough. Release the straps. Lift off the decal. And the mold from the screen. We're ready to start squeezing out the extra moisture. Now we start taking out the extra water. The screen prevents the sponge from tearing apart the paper fibers. Now I'm going to replace the rigid grid with some absorbent fabric. And continue squeezing out that extra water. A good way to get even pressure is to use a block. Transferring the formed paper is called couching. Each of the sheets is put on a piece of fabric. I'm using terry cloth, but I think wool is probably a better couching sheet. This alternating stack of freshly formed, very delicate paper sheets is called couching, and the result is a pile called the post. I'm going to compress my post with my press. That will squeeze out some more of the water, and I'll let that stand for a few hours, then I'll take it out and apply new couching sheets. This has been sitting for hours, so I'm going to switch now to couching paper, and I'm using blotter paper for couching paper. The process is the same as before, where I'm going to be alternating a piece of my paper, my new paper, with pieces of couching paper. So again, it's couching paper, my made paper, couching paper, and so on until you make a post. And the post goes back into the press for further drying. I made these pieces a little earlier, and now I can look also to see how my watermark turned out. Oh, it shows up very well.